Hello, I hope you're well today. My name is Nick, and if you are like, who is this random guy that's popped up on my phone or my computer? I live in New Zealand, and I've been taking a journey and inviting whoever wants to come with me through the 316 passages of the New Testament. Basically, God has had me seeing that number a lot lately, and as I reflected on that, what that means, I felt a prompting to reflect on the 316 passages of the New Testament. And there's been so much rich stuff that God has highlighted to me. And I've just been sharing with you what I've been learning or being reminded of. And today we're up to James 3:16. In order to understand what James 3:16 is saying, I'm going to also share the few verses on either side of it. Gives us a chance to understand the context of it. But it's talking about the difference between worldly wisdom and heavenly wisdom. There is a difference, and we can discern the difference because of the keys that we have in this scripture and in scripture as a whole as well. Because I really believe that there is there's stuff that comes from God, but the enemy will often create a counterfeit version of something. And I think wisdom is one of those examples. And I think in the world that we're living in today, there is so much that is being paraded as good and wise and true and right, yet it's actually not from God. It's actually part of that counterfeit that the enemy is trying to create. And so I think for us as Christians, it is vital that we are grounded in our relationship with Jesus. We're grounded in the scriptures so that we can understand what is true heavenly wisdom and what is worldly wisdom. So I'm going to briefly unpack the difference between the two according to this text, with the hope that it will encourage and bless you as well. So I'm going to start in verse 13. It says this: "If you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom." Now, I get the sense as I read that this letter was being written to some people who thought they were pretty they had it all together. They thought they were the bee's knees. They thought they were high and mighty, that they had this whole wisdom thing sussed, and they were parading that around in an arrogant, boastful way. But I think that's an important key here. Firstly, people who are possessing heavenly wisdom will reflect it in their lives. It will show by the fruit of their lives. And it's what he's saying. If you truly are wise, then let it show in your life, in the actions that flow from you. And then it says, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. I think that is an important key. True heavenly wisdom is humble. And I think a lot of stuff is being paraded in our world today in an arrogant way. And so we have to discern that. Is this humble? Is it coming from a place of humility, or is this coming from a place of boasting and being prideful and being arrogant? And so I think that that's really important that we discern. And we can only work on our own hearts. We can't necessarily know for sure what's going in the hearts of everyone else. But I think it's a good reminder for us to let God search our hearts for us and to reveal to us, am I being arrogant in any way, or am I reflecting the humility that comes from true wisdom that comes from the Lord? Then we get to verse 14. It says this: "But if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying, for jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom." I think this is a really important thing as well. And I think what I'm noticing is there are a lot of, I see it all over social media. I see it all over the internet. A lot of people are posting their opinions on things. A lot of people are getting behind different causes, different justice movements. And I think they all often come from a place of wanting to make a wrong right, wanting to restore something that is out of kilter. And that in itself is not a bad thing. But I think sometimes we can fall into the trap of doing it from a place of bitterness and resentment and jealousy. And my translation says selfish ambition. In other words, a desire to get even with someone, a desire to of what's in it for me rather than what's in it for the greater good. Another word for selfish ambition is strife, which means division, factions. And so when we're acting from a place of bitterness and jealousy and selfishness or strife, we're actually causing division, we're causing disunity, we're causing disharmony. And I think we're seeing that in spades in the world today, which is a telltale sign of whether something is heavenly wisdom or that counterfeit worldly wisdom. Is it causing disunity? Is it causing disharmony? Or is it causing peace? And is it bringing people together? I think that's really important. So what he's saying here is if you are bitterly jealous, if there is selfish ambition, don't act like you're not. Don't try and cover it up with boasting and lying, saying, yeah, I have it all together. That's called hypocrisy. And then he says in verse 15, for jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. This is quite blunt, this part of the text, but he says such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. Now, the word for earthly is worldly, whether it be physically or morally. What kind of moral standards are coming out of this? Is it a worldly standard or is it in line with God's standard, which we learn through this? Then unspiritual is another word for sensual. In other words, acting on human instincts, acting on our sinful nature. There's no self-control. So we just lash out based on our feelings. That's actually worldly wisdom. And I think that's very sobering because our world today is all about I do what I feel. I act on what I feel. But actually that's worldly wisdom according to this text. And so we have to be very careful to not fall into that same trap. And then finally it says, and this is the most sobering one, it says that kind of wisdom is demonic. We're actually partnering with the devil and his schemes when we are choosing to act from that place, when we're choosing to buy into and partner with that kind of wisdom, we're partnering with the enemy. And so I don't want to do that. I don't want to partner with the enemy. I want to partner with God. And I hope you do too. Then it says in verse 16, for wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. Disorder also means confusion, chaos, tumult, disruption. And you look at the world that we're in right now. Look at how much of that is going on because so many of us are partnering with worldly wisdom. It's really quite sobering. So we have this understanding of worldly wisdom here, and then it contrasts it with heavenly wisdom, the true wisdom that comes from God. It says from verse 17, but the wisdom from above is first of all pure. In other words, holy, innocent. There's no ulterior motives. It's also peace-loving. So it's more concerned about unity, peace, bringing people together, not causing division, but causing people to come together. It's gentle at all times. It's not harsh. It's not cruel. It doesn't tear people down. It's gentle in its nature. And it's willing to yield to others. Now, that doesn't mean compromising on sin. What it does mean is a willingness to listen to others with the understanding of, you know what, I'm human. I don't have all the answers. I'm not right 100% of the time on 100% of things. It's a willingness to seek to understand and not be understood with the idea of learning and realizing I might need to change my mind on some things. You may or may not, but it's having that posture of being willing to listen and to seek to understand others. It then says it is full of mercy and good deeds. In other words, compassion, tenderness, which was something that Jesus showed a lot. He was someone who was full of compassion. And when he acted, it was often because he was moved by that compassion to help people. And I think when we're moved by compassion rather than bitterness, the fruit will show in how we live our lives. And then finally, it says it shows no favoritism and is always sincere. So it's impartial, It's unbiased. It's you're going to treat everyone the same, and you're not going to treat certain people some way and some other people another way because you don't like their views or you don't like who they are or what they do. So there is an unbiased nature about heavenly wisdom, and it's also sincere. In other words, there's no hypocrisy, there's no false pretense, there's no false narratives you're trying to push. It's what you see is what you get. And then it says in verse 18, those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. It's using that concept of sowing and reaping. And basically those who are living in the ways of God's wisdom, of course, we talked about how it's peace-loving, it's peaceable, then you're going to sow seeds of peace because of your gentle demeanor, because you're impartial, because you're compassionate, because you're willing to yield to others. It's going to sow seeds of peace. And you may not see the results straight away, but the fruit that comes from that will be righteousness. It will actually have the effect of what God intends for it because of the seeds of peace that you're sowing. And so, it's a really beautiful picture, I think, of the difference between the two. And so that's coming from James chapter 3, verse 13 through 18. We could unpack that a whole lot more. I'm just briefly touching on it. But I hope that this is an encouragement to you, and I hope that this can give you a good guide into discerning what is true wisdom, and also discerning how you conduct yourself, how I conduct myself based on what I'm seeing in this scripture. So I'm going to leave that with you to soak on. As I said, James 3, verses 13 through 18. I hope this has blessed you, and we'll leave it with you. I hope you have an amazing day. I will chat to you again soon as we continue our journey through the 316 passages of the New Testament. See ya. Connect with Narrow Way Ministries on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, email, or online at narrowwayministries.net.